Yes, we are, Gordon. Please.
I'd just like to make a very brief welcome to everyone here to share information about what is an extremely important topic. From the very early days of the lockdown, the board and staff were very conscious of the fact that it would be difficult for clubs to get back to anything approaching normal at the end of lockdown. We didn't anticipate quite how long it would go on for, and in fact we didn't anticipate quite how difficult it would be. I think we're all aware of the problems that people have faced, and I'm very glad that we've got something here that helps us share information and see if we can work through a number of problems. There are various staff and board members here. Unfortunately, Gail Webb, who's our club liaison officer, who's our club board member, isn't able to be here, but we have Tony Russ, I believe, who has just as much background with clubs and counties and will be here on behalf of the board talking about those things. So that's all from me. I'd just like to say very welcome to everyone, and I do hope we have a productive and cooperative meeting today.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. And I'd like to add my own welcome to everyone who's made time to attend. So the reason for this meeting is the changing times in Bridge. The game we love is always in flux, but a lot changed when from March 2020, most clubs had to close their doors to face-to-face sessions. And that period extended right to, for many clubs, July 2021 or even longer when some reopened. The consequences of lockdown were not all negative. We've seen huge energy put into online bridge platforms, and bridge has been a vital source of entertainment and social contact for many during lockdown. Some even learnt to play for the first time. That said, lockdown also brought many challenges. Less bridge was played overall. According to our numbers, the number of sessions played dropped by about 80% initially. This recovered as online bridge gathered pace to something like 4/5 as much as before. But even that disguised the fact that around 1/3 of our regular players had stopped playing during lockdown. Not every club was able to migrate members to online play. Some people joined other clubs as a result. Some clubs also had a burden of premises rent or other expenses without their usual income. But what we want to focus on today is how things look now. Can we say bridge is back to normal? Well, for better or worse, this is not the case. The government...
Okay, I'll send it to you now, okay? What was that?
Yeah, the government has lifted COVID restrictions, but high levels of infection mean that some are still anxious about face-to-face play. Another factor is that the success of online means new patterns of play and potentially a dilution of the number who want to play face-to-face. In most cases, that means face-to-face numbers are lower than they were before. And for clubs which were already suffering from small numbers, that is a huge issue. The demographics of our game also mean that we were already having to work hard to win and teach new members. And those underlying issues still exist today, so we have even more to do. What we want to know now is how we can best support you. We therefore want to hear from all the clubs represented here, as well as from our speakers. We have a lot to pack in, so it will be fast-paced, but you can ask questions at any time, either by raising a virtual hand or by typing in the chat. While we hope to have the presentations completed by around 11 o'clock, we may continue after that for as long as you want in order to allow plenty of time. You can also reach us, of course, anytime by email or telephone. So unless there's any sort of questions initially, I'd like to hand over to David Dunford from Nottingham Bridge Club, who is going to tell us how it was there as a club that did very successfully migrate to online, but is now facing challenges returning to its face-to-face pattern. So David and Jonathan can do the magic of giving a screen share if you would like.
Please, yes.
Just back on the jump, because it's not thanks to one more piece of
Right, so Nottingham, we're very fortunate that we have, you can all see the screen, can you now?
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate in having our own premises, so we haven't got problems that some clubs have of trying to work out whether they can afford to reopen. If I cast my mind back 2 years ago when I sorry, I've got COVID, so I'm a bit coffee. I was elected chairman 2 years ago. It was a very busy week. On Sunday, I became chairman. Monday, as a result of the government regulations, I closed the club. Tuesday, I carried out my first running a tournament on BBO with a few willing guinea pigs. And then on Friday, we started regular BBO tournaments twice a week. It was Wild West days back then, if you can remember. The chance of staying online for a length of time to run a drive was quite challenging. It was an enormous exercise to get members playing online, absolutely enormous. Failed on 1 or 2 occasions. Somebody, I couldn't even get them to click on a link to open the Zoom so I could talk to them. But we did get a lot of people on. We're a bit unusual that what we've done, well, locally we're unusual, that we've made our BBO sessions members only. Although we have accepted anybody willing to pay the annual subscription. We've got a member in Canada, some in Wales, and others scattered around the country. But the reason for that was to try to retain an identity of a members club, where members do things and share in getting that club going. And I think one of the features of our online...
Hi, I've sent it to you.
Right, one of the features of our tournaments is that we allow everybody to speak to the tournament, and we get lots of messages thanking the director at the end of it. We became a virtual EBU club when the EBU introduced those, and we eventually built up to 5 sessions each week. Going online highlighted a known problem. We didn't get any of our existing directors directing online. They're not comfortable with computers. Most of them were in their mid-80s. At the end of a face-to-face drive before COVID, I would sometimes see 3 of them gathered around the computer trying to work out how to put the results up onto the website. So, as I say, we've got all our BBO directors were new. We did consider teaching beginners, but our usual teacher of beginners didn't want to teach online. And I note that the qualified EBU teacher in the north of the county, when I spoke to her, she also didn't want to teach online. We did get going though. We had 14 ladies who live in Nottingham and were keen to learn, and 2 others taught them and I helped. And I think an excellent job was done in teaching them, but we haven't managed to retain any of them for face-to-face play. So it's all very well having people online, but if you haven't got them there with you, actually getting them there proved impossible for us. Strangely though, our person who used to give Thursday evening face-to-face sessions for improvers, he went online and he was overrun. He had about 30 or 40 people turning up on Thursdays for him. He's now gone back face-to-face and they're just as popular face-to-face. So that's been a very successful change. Since we always need directors, one of the things I did during the lockdowns was I took 4 people through book rulings, 20-minute sessions at a time, half a dozen of them, just to give them the experience, the understanding they needed to make book rulings. And then as the club opened up again face-to-face, had a practical session for them because they'd not had one, and use that as a refresher for existing directors in the club. And we also invited other clubs to send people along, and everybody seemed to enjoy that and gave them confidence to go back to directing. We returned face-to-face as soon as we could. We basically followed pub rules. So we're actually playing a very strange form of rule of 6 bridge to start with. I would say that numbers are still completely unpredictable. We can have 8 or 9 tables one week and then 4 the next. It's absolutely uncertain what will happen. I wouldn't like to predict it ever. I would say that people are nervous. I had somebody who admitted that they were just plain lazy. And somebody else said, I'm not going to change out of my pajamas, drive across Nottingham and come and play bridge on a dark, miserable, cold night. And quite a few people said they don't now, I think part of the nervousness generally, don't want to drive at night. And what we're finding is that we used to play 27 boards on a regular basis. People are more than happy to have 24 in an evening or 21 in an afternoon. And another club I play at, they've gone from 24 to 21 as well. We did for a brief period try to run a BBO and a face-to-face session on the same night, but we just didn't get enough people out. And so we just closed down that BBO session and only had face-to-face. I had several complaints about closing down the BBO, and I had several complaints that we didn't do the same on the other night, and so it balanced out roughly the same each way. We've now worked up to, we have 4 face-to-face sessions and just 2 on BBO. The teaching of beginners has restarted, and there's a full class there. That's very successful. I've said also that the face-to-face session for improvers is going very well. We used to have a supervised play session, which was quite popular, but before COVID, but that hasn't picked up at all. If we get 2 tables, we're doing very well. It's no wind that blows nobody any good. The hiatus helped to introduce some changes. We now have ANACOL only 14 to 16 boards on a Wednesday evening, which is aimed at beginners, and there's advice on hand. So we run that on a UMSC 11. We've separated out scorers from directors, so that all the people who were directing on BBO, where you don't really direct to make decisions, but they were all computer literate, they have become targets, become scorers, and I'm building up the number of scorers we've got. I also took advantage of the gap in play to move from Bridgemates to tablets, which I think would have been a bigger problem if we hadn't had the pause. We've got a new cashless system in for the face-to-face table fees and subs, and strangely, there was a bit of a reluctance to have a formal rota for directors pre-COVID, despite the fact that every now and again the informality of it broke down, and so by the back door that was introduced. So to conclude, post-pandemic, we're in a different place. I don't know what that different place is, I just know that it is different. We're still exploring that. What I do like about where we are is that both the face-to-face and our BBO drives have what I would call a good feel to them. So the priority is to, from our point of view, is to make it an enjoyable experience to play bridge with us. We've we've just had a very successful Stand with Ukraine week, which ended with 2 drives on the Friday in the afternoon, 1 in the evening, and over the week we raised nearly £2,500 for Ukraine. So building a shared membership of the club and encouraging lots of people to take part. And we're looking now for other ways to have that sort of stimulus. We're looking at having Swiss teams and the Jubilee tea. So that's where we are. I'm not sure there's any answers in there at all, but that's where we've been.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciated it, especially your poorly, get well soon, you know, so thank you so much for giving up time today to talk to us. That was very interesting to me. One of the things that I'd love to follow up with you, and maybe put a link in the chat or something, is about the move from Bridgemates to tablets. I think we're quite interested in how you did that and what system you use and so on. So if you could share that with me, that would be very interesting, and the benefits you get from that. Does everyone need a tablet? Just one per table? You know, those sorts of practical questions. Any other quick...
We did have a couple of clubs come round to us and watch what we did, and then went away and put it in themselves.
Yeah, thank you. Any other quick questions for David before he probably goes and has a well-earned cup of cocoa?
I too will be interested to find out how he moved from Bridgemates to tablets. So I would certainly like that information.
And me too, please. I would also like to understand that. So it may be worth maybe getting some sort of information in written form that would help. And the other quick question I had was, when you have got both face-to-face and BBO sessions, do people come and play on both the sessions?
We don't, apart from a few weeks, we don't have them simultaneously. We do have people who play both on a Tuesday afternoon face-to-face and a Tuesday evening online.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, any more questions, by all means, put them in the chat. I'd now like to hand over to Mark from eBed, who's going to explain some of the resources that we have for teaching and director training, which has been even more of an issue getting back together after lockdown. So over to you, Mark.
Good morning. Hi, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm Mark Humphreys. I'm new with eBed, which is the English Bridge Education and Development, which is a national charity for the promotion and development of bridge. So I'm the Education and Development Manager, and one of my main responsibilities is arranging the training of club tournament directors and also club bridge teachers. So I'm here primarily to talk about how eBed is addressing the need to boost tournament director training for clubs, to support the clubs as they reopen for face-to-face bridge. But we recognise there's also a need to train new bridge teachers, and we can help there too. So we'll talk about that briefly. So firstly, what are we doing about, let's look at TD training. So I've only been in this role a short time, but there's a very familiar feel to a lot of my working days, which is I get phone calls or I get emails from people in clubs telling me that they're very concerned that they don't have sufficient tournament directors at the moment. And as they reopen, there's a real need to get new people trained because the existing TDs aren't coming back or aren't comfortable coming back. And so, you know, my top priority right now is to try and help clubs get new tournament directors trained, people that haven't done it before, get them trained, get them through our normal program, so that they can start becoming TDs in clubs. But let me just give you some background. In 2019, before the world changed, eBed actually ran 15 different TD courses in various locations across the country. So it was a very well-functioning organisation. We were helping clubs to maintain a steady progression of players. So 15 courses, 15 different locations, covering the bridge community in Britain really well, or in England really well. But like much of the bridge world, eBed has really struggled through the last 2 years. So many of the training programs we've planned in this period have obviously had to be cancelled due to lockdown restrictions. And even when restrictions were lifted, and we were able to put courses on, there were insufficient delegates ready to come out for face-to-face training. And what we found is in 2021, last year, you know, only 2 of our full 4-day TD training course programs actually went ahead. So we've gone from running 15 programs a year to running 2 last year. So it's a tremendous change in what we were able to do here as an organisation. That's really affected us as well, because obviously we take income that helps fund the charity from our programs. We've had staff reductions, a big change out of staff, and we're really a very small organisation currently with very limited capability. Okay, but clearly with this shortfall in training, there's obviously going to be some sort of backlog of potential tournament directors waiting to get trained, and that's certainly what I'm hearing from the people who contact me every day. So what are we doing about it and trying to rebuild our capability? So this year we've already run 2 course programs down on the south coast, and we've worked very successfully with the Berkshire and Buckinghamshire County organisation to help them train a large group of TDs from their club. So in all, we've probably put around 35 people through the TD program this year. So there's 35 people have trained as tournament directors this year so far. Now I've started to schedule new training events running this spring and summer. So we've currently got, and these will be our full 4-day training offer. This is the standard training offer that we offer, that's designed to take a club player and turn them into a reasonably competent club tournament director. We run them over the 4 separate days. We typically space them around a fortnight apart, and we try and obviously spread these around different areas to help people. And you can see them on our eBed website, on our TD course calendar. So I'll put a link to that in the chat in a minute if people want to see. But we've put these courses on this spring and summer. There's one in Stratford-on-Avon. There'll be one in Manchester. There's one in Cheltenham. They all start in May, and there's still time to book up for those. And we've also got one starting in Aylesbury in June. And the intent of these courses is that they will start in spring and finish before the middle of the summer, when obviously things start to shut down for school summer holidays and people aren't available to complete training. So the idea is that we've got at least 4 opportunities now spread across the country for people to get trained in different locations before the summer recess. So plenty of time to still get booked on those courses. The one at Stratford-on-Avon is quite popular. The others actually need a few more people to book on them to become viable. We're still hoping that we'll get a bit more attention for those courses, a few more attendees. So you can book on those via the My EBU website. So if you can access My EBU, you can go in through utilities and you can find those courses and book there. You can also get in touch with my colleague Lisa Miller via phone. Again, I'll give you some contact details for these people and how to get in contact with us. But please bear with us as we try to arrange more. I know that there are places we're not reaching yet, and there are people that would like training. The limit for us is trainers. And it's those who are able to cover certain regions, obviously that's where we were a little bit short. So we're trying to work on that and trying to fix that. I mean, I've got a group in the Newmarket area who are desperate to get trained, and I'm still waiting to find somebody appropriate to help those out. But apart from the ones I've mentioned here, I don't think we're going to be running anything more this summer because of the importance of getting things in and finish the spring and summer before the summer holidays. So hope to have some courses on the website, on the calendar for later in the year, which will start in autumn, and we'll try and cover some other areas so that people can get some training options there. And if your club or county would like some training, do please get in touch, because often I can aggregate demand in certain areas and realize that we've got several people looking for training, and that helps me prioritize where we put that training demand on. And the best example of that was the work we did with Berkshire and Buckinghamshire, who came to eBed a while back and aggregated a whole bunch of clubs in their area, and even part funded the course. I mean, some of the county organisations we hear are sitting on reasonable cash reserves at the moment, and so putting those cash reserves to work for subsidising TD training for their member clubs would be a great way to sort of put that cash to good use for their organisations. The other subject that comes up a little bit, nowhere near as much as the one we've just been talking about, is refresher training for TDs. So some people do come to me and say we'd like to have some refresher training, but these typically tend to be very small groups, and they tend to be looking for quite bespoke training programs. So somebody's looking for help with online judgment rulings, someone else is looking for something about it feels a bit rusty about face-to-face. It's very difficult for us to address that kind of demand, because it's people looking for very much different things in very small groups. So at the moment, it's not what I would call the priority for eBed to help with. So I'd really rather use our resources, our experienced trainers, to help satisfy what I think is the bigger and more important demand, which is to get new people trained as TDs. So that's where we're putting our effort in right now. Okay, so if you do want refresher training, I'm not saying we can't help you, but really what I would advise at the moment is actually to look somewhere else, which is the fantastic free resource that you can see, which is the EBU TD training video. So on the EBU website, there's some fabulous TD training videos that Gordon and team put together. They cover many of the frequently occurring situations for the club TD would encounter. They're really worth watching, and they will help anybody get back up to speed with face-to-face directing. So I can I'll put the link in to help you find those. But if you go to the EBU website, you look at laws and ethics, and then select TD video rulings, and you'll see a bunch of videos there that are all fantastic efforts to watch, and they will help you get back up to speed. Okay, The other thing that I've just briefly mentioned is club teachers. Obviously, it's really important for the future of our clubs and for the future of our game that new players continue to learn bridge. So eBed again helps to do that, and one of our main purposes is to support the training of bridge teachers. We're not getting anywhere near the level of inquiries for teachers right now as we are for director training, but we're beginning to see that move in the last couple of weeks. So we've got 3 teacher training programs on our calendar at the moment. The next one is at Horsham, 23rd, 24th of April, and that's actually booking up nicely, so it's definitely going to go ahead. And there'll be other teacher training programs in Aylesbury in the West Midlands this spring and summer as well. So and then we'll be able to schedule some more probably in the autumn and later in the year. Okay, and there is help with those. If your club needs a teacher, the EBU can help to subsidise the cost of those places. So please get in touch with me again. Even if you don't qualify for that, all EBU members are entitled to a 20% discount if they book and pay through their club. So there are opportunities for people to get on these courses with a bit of subsidy and a bit of help there. Okay, I'll paste a number of links and phone numbers and email addresses for people into the chat for this meeting, so you'll be able to see what we're talking about here. But I'll just pause for questions and breath, really. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mark. There was a couple of questions in the chat just to point you to. One of them was why not run TD courses online?
Yeah, great question. And I've thought about that a lot. And to be honest, when I took this job, that was one of the things I thought I'd be able to bring to this organization. But the reality is, if you actually look at our TD training program, it's really geared at the moment at face-to-face bridge. And we simulate a number of situations. You know, in every day of that program, we put people into simulations of real at the table situations. It's extremely difficult to sort of simulate those in an online environment. We have to simulate revokes and bids out of turn, so you can't simulate those with the current online platforms. So whilst I think it's a great idea and it's something I'd really love to be able to implement, we just haven't got the resource to be able to transform our program and put it in an online framework at the moment. So great idea, but we just can't do it right now. It's not going to be something we're going to be offering for a while. I'd love to be doing it, but we just can't do it. There's too much work involved to change our current program into an online format. Okay.
So another question, how many do you need to make a session viable?
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think we're probably looking at running viable sessions, probably around six or more normally is sufficient. That would cover the costs. We've got some of the current programs we've probably only got about 4 people booked on. But although there's potentially a lot of interest in those areas, one of the things that happens is I get a lot of calls saying we need people to go on the courses. We put the courses on, and for whatever reason, people don't book. They can't make the dates, or suddenly the demand isn't really as big as we've seen. And I've seen that several times with people who've called me and asked me to schedule events in certain areas. So, you know, what that means is when we put them on, we have to look at the numbers, because I think if we've got fewer than, I don't know, 5 or 6, it really becomes very inefficient for us to put those courses on. But I don't particularly want to start cancelling events either. So it's I'd really rather just get a few more bookings in if we can, so we can let these things go ahead.
I have a question. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, carry on. Can I? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Fine. Go on.
As I understand it, and you can confirm it or not, you need a special type of tournament director to be at the blue pointed events. Is that true? You have to have a county director rather than a club director.
I'll let someone else who knows that the director circuit, Gordon or
Jonathan. If that is true, are you holding any courses for that kind of director?
Okay, so we have been doing in the past, we do an advanced training program, which is to take people who are experienced club TDs and train them to the level where they could then go forward for a county level assessment. What we would like to do. Are there any
courses in the pipeline for those?
Yeah,
types?
so we've got, right, okay, so that is the intention. What we are going to be doing is running, we hope to hold two in the autumn, two preparation sessions, one in the south of England and one in the north of England for people that would be prepared to advance from TD, from club TDs to county level. And then next year we'll be running the county TD assessment in the spring. We normally run that in the autumn, but we've decided, talking to the various people who help provide that training, we've decided that the county assessment will be next spring, and the preparation sessions for those will be scheduled in the autumn this year. Okay.
And can I just again ask you, what's your solution?
If I can just answer a little bit about this.
Well, I was going to say, what's the solution other than probably finding someone to travel down?
Well, that's what I'm trying to answer.
Okay. All right.
It has always been the case that blue and green pointed events, licensed events, are meant to have approval for TDs, and that in principle they have been county TDs. What we discovered is that over the last few years this has not been followed up on enough, and for a number of reasons it's more important now than ever that we do ensure that events are run by TDs who do it properly. However, it's not an absolute that they must have the county course, and in particular if a TD has been running an event for a number of years and doing it successfully, we'd be very happy to approve them. So the answer is simply tell us who you want, tell us why you want them, and we'll be happy to approve it.
Thank you. That's a great relief to us here, because we have a couple of people who want to go on this course, but
yes,
you know.
Yeah, I would also very much encourage them to do the course when they're able to.
Oh yes, yes, we're waiting.
It's a great course. It was the start of my TDing, and I still think back to it with a great deal of fondness.
We were really under the impression that it was going to be this year, but never mind. At least if it's next year, fine.
Yeah, it always used to be once a year in the autumn, but everything has been disrupted. But yes, don't ever feel that you can't run an event for lack of a qualified TD. Let us know who you want, and we'll be happy to approve.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Mark, there's a question about Smart Bridge, but I'm not going to give that to you now. I think we're going to hear from Tony, who may mention that, and we'll of course do that at the end. It's quite a big subject. So I'm going to ask, first of all, if you've got a question you haven't asked yet, you will get a chance later, but I'm going to ask now Oliver Cohen to speak. Oliver has been brilliant in putting on online bridge during lockdown, but also has quite a lot of thoughts about face-to-face, the importance of that, and how we live in a sort of with both side by side. So Oliver, over to you.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yep.
That's a shame. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. These are my views, not necessarily views shared by others, but I was asked to give my opinion, and so I'm going to do that, and I'm giving it honestly. Nice to see lots of you here. I don't recognise most names. However you'd put your BBO usernames, I couldn't know who you were. I'm sure I've directed most of you at some point. If anyone's got or wants any information on what I'm going to say as I'm going through, either get my email address off Jonathan or Gordon, or private message me your email address and I can send you the information. Don't put your email openly in the chat. Unless you want it being used and abused by 60 other people. Before I go into it as well, just a very quick public thanks as well to Gordon for allowing me to run a sim pairs a couple of weeks ago for Ukraine. Thanks to everyone who took part. We had 396 pairs on the day, and we've raised just under £9,000, so thank you for that. How can clubs adapt for changing patterns of play? This is not going to be a popular answer on this forum, but online bridge is here to stay, whether we like it or not. I think the chap from Nottingham, I apologise, don't remember your name, but you mentioned something earlier about people with laziness and just wanting to stay at home. The bottom line is, if you pull your online offering all together as a club, you are not going to force players to come back to your club. They will simply go elsewhere and play online. What you need to be doing as a club, in my opinion, is finding a way to generate revenue and income from those players rather than losing it. So if that means you've got a way of making perhaps only 50 pence per player per game, and you've got a pair who aren't going to return but will play online twice a week, that's £2 per week from that pair. 50 weeks of the year is £100. And if they feel part of your club, they'll also pay their £20 or so subs. So for every pair you accommodate in that fashion, you are going to generate £120 to £150 a year. If you've got 7 pairs like that in your club, that's about £1,000 a year, which to some clubs is going to make a huge difference. I've spoken to lots of clubs who are in the process of returning. It's very easy for me to manage this for them, have that sort of, it's not a hybrid game as such, but to have that option there for them in a way. They can generate, this is not me taking money off the clubs, this is splitting money with the clubs they wouldn't otherwise have had access to. Hopefully these players will return down the line, but right now it's better to have them feeling part of the club and keep the door open. The next point that I think everyone needs to be aware of, and I don't know the answer, is it legal to pull your online offering altogether? It's not been challenged to my knowledge just yet, but we're in such a litigious society today. It's just a matter of time before someone challenges their club to say they aren't physically able to go to the club, and the club have demonstrated they can run games online through lockdown. I could be wrong on this, but the law doesn't take into account the fact that clubs might lose money if they're just running a game for themselves. So it's necessary for the clubs to find a way around that. I will follow up what I've just said with the fact that personally I love face-to-face bridge. Yes, this is a turkey voting for Christmas. I make a living from online bridge now, but for me, when I get the chance, I will still go out and play face-to-face. I can't run club sessions myself because I'm on the doorstep of Leeds Bridge Club and I'm not looking to start a territory war with another bridge club. I want to work with these clubs. I ran my first face-to-face congress in January. We had 13 tables in Nottingham. It was very successful. And I've got face-to-face congresses booked in for Leeds in July and September in Nottingham, with numbers coming in for both of them already. The problem is, sorry, I'm also in the process as well of launching an Improvers Day face-to-face to get some of these newer players into the congress environment as well. It's really important to remember that people have learned in the last couple of years are newer players. In some cases, they've never held a pack of cards. And if they've learned online, they may have no desire to go back or to go to playing face-to-face. So I think it's really important they're accommodated. The way forward for face-to-face, in my opinion, has got to come from the EBU from the top. Lots of events are already being advertised as online, right up to July's Riviera Congress. Does that send the right message? I don't think there's any excuse at all for counties not to be running their big events face-to-face, as they can be done safely. But, and I include myself in this group, we've all realised the financial risks of an online event. Yeah, so I've faced it over and online. If I'm running online, I can employ one TD for 25 to 30 tables. I only have to pay for the people who turn up. I haven't got to arrange food, and it's far more attractive than dealing with a hotel, schlepping equipment from place to place and sorting logistics. Online is simply more lucrative as a business perspective at a time when we're all struggling. To be clear, that's not a criticism of the EBU for moving those events face-to-face, because ultimately it's a financial decision, and I get that. I appreciate you're all probably now thinking this little talk was not much use at all from the perspective of driving players back to face-to-face bridge. But I think the time's come that we've got to accept that the future of the game is clubs need to work together. And a lot of players are just not going to come back face-to-face, at least for the time being. Our job's to ensure that we don't lose those players, because as you know, as a club, because these revenues of these players who might not step over your doorstep could be the difference between staying afloat and going under. Moving forward, as with every customer-facing business, the EBU need to do what they can to make the clubs feel more loved than they currently do and appreciate it. And in turn, the clubs need to make their players feel loved and a part of them, whether they're going there face-to-face or not. There's people who've been club members 20, 30 years who might not return to the club physically, but they are part of the club. We're all in this together, and we can all survive it, but it needs us to work together, and sometimes that means creativity and flexibility. Just because things have always been done a certain way in the past, it doesn't mean they can't change to move with the times.
Thank you very much, Oliver. That was really interesting. I'm going to leave questions, I think, till later because we're quite tight for time. And we very much want to hear from Tony, who's going to, a board member, who's going to tell us something about what the EBU is doing in terms of marketing initiatives. So I think Tony's got a screen share, Jonathan. So
yes, please.
Fire that up. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, Tony should be able to share.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was the scene at Yeovil Bridge Club on Thursday night, Yeovil Phoenix Bridge Club, which held its first session. You can see how delighted everybody was to be back at bridge. And the thing that got the club off the ground was the enthusiasm of the people who were organising it. And I think when we talk about promotional materials and marketing materials and teaching programs, none of this is functional or works well without the enthusiasm. And I'm always interested to note that the clubs that have done well and are doing well are led by enthusiastic committees and enthusiastic people. So underlying everything I say is the necessary enthusiasm to engage with whatever the project is. So I'm going to talk to you about the promotional materials that the EBU has made available to support clubs as they try to recruit new players. And we have a target, don't we, to get returning players, as Oliver has just been talking about, getting players back face-to-face at the club, although I support 100% what he said about it's going to be a mixture of online and face-to-face in the future, and we have to embrace the opportunities that online offer us. There's some suggestions for the use of these materials, and I want to finish up by showing you a new Bridge webpage that Tim has been developing. I also want to support what Oliver just said, and I made a note of it, making players feel loved. I think that's terribly important. I think in my own county of 2 clubs which kept very much in touch with their members, laid on online bridge, especially for their members, and are now absolutely thriving. And I could point you to another club which did exactly the opposite and is dead. So I come back to this theme of enthusiasm. Whatever we do, we've got to do it with great enthusiasm. So here are the materials that are now available from the EBU, and we start off with the leaflets. I don't need to tell you what a leaflet is, but the idea is to leave it around in waiting rooms, in libraries where people can pick it up and see it. I want you to notice the white space on the left, and I'll return to that later. As well as the A5 leaflets, we have the A3 and A4 posters, which are to go on notice boards here and there. Again, the white space, and notice the QR code there at the bottom right, which will take you to the Play Bridge page, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Following on from that, we have postcards, and I think this is quite a nice idea. So how nice it would be to get a postcard congratulating me on my promotion to club master or county master, if I should be so lucky. Congratulating people for doing well in sim pairs and whatever. I don't know with the price of postage now whether that's prohibitive, but I think it's a jolly nice idea. And all these things have our slogan, the bridge plus friendship plus fun is a happy life and a healthy brain, which I think is a very positive message. We also have banners and flags which are available for borrowing. So if you're going to have a congress, it's nice to have a banner or a flag outside promoting your event and the EBU. and ideas about what you can do with these resources. Self-evident, you're reading that faster than I can say it, so I leave that up there. Lots of different places. I would highlight the social media groups, which I think is very important. I think maybe we're not an age group that's that familiar with social media, but we all have children and grandchildren, and it's incredibly easy to promote events and clubs on sites like Facebook, like the Nextdoor site, if you're familiar with it. And every community has a local Facebook page. And it's so easy to post details of your events and activities on those page. And I'm sure there's help available from Tim or Jonathan to help you with that if necessary. And of course, your Bridge Club websites are the primary, and sharing information on other club websites and county websites is obviously very, very useful. So how do you get the materials? You get them from the EBU shop, and simply go to the EBU shop. You'll see that logo that you can see on the screen now. Click on that, and that will enable you to have a look at and order any of the materials. So the white space. The important thing about a poster or a leaflet is that it's a call to action. It tells people what you want them to do. So in every case, every poster needs to be filled in with a telephone number that people can ring, an email address that people contact. So having seen the poster in the library, people need to know what to do. And obviously that's different in Cumbria to Cornwall. So they have to be completed either by hand or, if you're really clever, by overprinting or sticky labels. And to finalize, I want to show you the Play Bridge webpage, which is under construction at the moment. So when it's finished, this is what you'll be able to see. And if I put in a totally random postcode, we'll see that it brings up details of the amazing Bridge Club, the afternoon Bridge Club, and the traditional.
We can't see the webpage, just see your slide at the moment. So
okay, I'll have to reshare. Can you see him?
Yeah, that's worked.
Right, so that is when you put in the postcode. Obviously I put a 1 in because we're practicing. You get all the information about the clubs. And if I go to the amazing Bridge Club for more details, it will tell me where it is, when it is, and what's happening and what facilities the club offers. I know Tim's working really hard on that, and that is a work in development, but I think it'll be a very helpful step forward. So in conclusion, the EBU is there to help the rebirth of clubs. We have marketing materials which are available and expertise which is available, particularly from Jonathan and Tim, who I advise people to get in touch with if they need any help. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. Now, just to, let's see, we've just got a couple of minutes. Couldn't you say anything, Tony or Gordon, about Smart Bridge, which people have asked about, and what it is, the mysteries of Smart Bridge, in a couple of sentences?
I could do that. Yes. Gordon, me?
Yeah, please.
I think Tony's probably more up on it than I am. So if you're happy to do that, Tony, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have been involved in it a little bit. Smart Bridge is a 12-week program taking beginners to a stage where it is anticipated that with supported play, with assistance, they will be able to sit down and have a sensible game of bridge. It's an online program, and as I say, 12 lessons delivered via video or online, and followed up by a Zoom session and followed up by real bridge practice hands. There is no plan to have a second session, a second course building on the first course. So that's it, basically. It's in construction at the moment. There has been a 12-week trial, and Gail Webb and I attended several of the sessions. Unfortunately, Jax Morecambe, who was leading the project, has left, and a new lady called Hilary Meadows, I think, has been appointed, and she's now working on phase 2 of the project, which is a second trial. So it's anticipated by EBED, who are running the project, that hopefully it will be available for clubs in the autumn. But it's been hampered by a change of staff in the middle.
Okay,
I could
thank you
answer
very
any
much.
specific questions, but that's the global picture.
Okay, what I'd suggest we do, let's defer any more questions following up on that till the end, because I do very much want to hear from Nikki Bainbridge, who comes from a smaller bridge club, teaching bridge club in Rugby Village, and has worked very hard to keep the club going during lockdown, and now after, in the current situation, we are this sort of strange quasi post-lockdown phase that we're in. So Nikki, a few words on how you've managed that.
Okay, can I share my screen? Yeah, so I hope you can all see a graph with blue and orange on it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, grand. This is our face-to-face table numbers. I'm, like Oliver, going to give you my views, and they are only my views, but just as online bridge is certainly here to stay, especially for sort of national level events. And county level events in lots of cases to avoid travelling. Northants, where I am, is about 100 miles top to bottom, and people are flatly refusing to go back to face-to-face leagues, for example. But I think face-to-face is where grassroots bridge happens, and it's where people enjoy their company and they enjoy a good game. And our club, it very much reflects that sort of ethos. It's not really a beginners club. We've got plenty of people who've been playing 30 or 40 years, but it's certainly not an elite club. We have very few players now with NGS over 50%, but we have a nice atmosphere. And I'd like to pick up on what David said. You know, we focus on enjoyable bridge. That's what we provide. So we went back as soon as we were able in July 2020, somewhat controversially, but it was successful. We had a lot of precautions. We took all the COVID precautions under the sun, and I used to go to a club and clean every surface before every session, and then put up screens and have separate sets of boards for each table and all the rest of it. And we had people turn up, and they were people who weren't playing online and didn't want to play online. And they were quite often people who lived alone and had no social contact since the last game of face-to-face bridge they'd had. And cases in Rugby at that time, we're a town of around 100,000, were about 5 or 6 at any time. We then had the big lockdown when case levels reached about 100 in Rugby. And during closed periods and all the time, we did beginners lessons online, and we brought a lot of new people to the game. We started, and we still continue, with a seminar every Tuesday morning and a practice on the topic every Thursday morning. So we continued online teaching and coaching. We started club sessions on Bridge Club Live as soon as they were able to do it. And we reached 8 tables a session. And in 2021, we switched to Real Bridge, and we kept an online session going for quite a while. But when we came back in 2021, we found interest in the online simply dropped away, and we've stopped doing it because there just wasn't enough interest. As you can see, we climbed our numbers steadily, and although we've only got 2 sessions a week now, they are back at the kind of levels that we used to get. You can then see, I think, the influence of Omicron in stuff dropping off in the autumn, and then it picked up again as we got the end of Plan B and face mask requirements went away. But lately, it's shown signs of dropping, and it's showing signs of dropping because our members are getting COVID, and they're getting filthy colds and things as well, often when they go off on cruises and holidays. And we've always been really good, and our members have been good at not turning up if they or people they're in contact with are infected. And I'm thinking of saying, if you've been on a cruise, you've got to be in isolation for a week, because it, frankly, in our place, it's 100%. You come off a cruise, you have a nasty bug. In addition to running the club, I've also conducted a continuous surveys of what other clubs are doing by looking at their websites. And I can show you, oh, this is what worked, what got people back together. First of all, newsletters. As soon as we went into the first lockdown, I started producing weekly newsletters to keep our community together, to advertise what we were doing online, and to help people help each other. And certainly people looked after each other as a result, I think, of us keeping them together on newsletters. I've now dropped back to one club newsletter a month, but I do another one every month as well, as it's become something I'm quite good at. We kept teaching and coaching. I'm still teaching and coaching. The game, as already been said, is only going to survive if we can keep people learning it and enjoying it. The online sessions certainly helped get us over a period where we were shut. When we came back, we raised the table money. And I think this is really important. Most face-to-face play is under financial pressure. And I see many club websites where they're struggling to raise enough to cover the cost of a venue. And yet I've also seen specific comments, and it's been my experience that we put a quid on the table money, which seemed drastic, but nobody has ever said a word about it. And it has helped us fill the hole from 2020 and keep going. So I think it's an important thing to consider. And I think our health protection measures were vital because they kept us from having any transmissions in the club, and I think we still haven't. And because they reassured people, we communicated what we were doing and why we were doing it, and that made people feel safe to come. All right, this is my survey. I know this is a lot of data to take in, but I am actually surveying now about 670 clubs. I use a tool that tells me every time their website changes. So that's what triggers the information here. I've added websites, clubs to the list that's being monitored for quite a time, and then processing the data got a bit much, so it's steady at the moment. I reckon it's probably around about half the number of clubs that were active before coronavirus. So it's not meant to be all clubs. But I just want to explain what you're seeing. So the blue column at the bottom are clubs that are operating hybrid events. That's the ones where you simultaneously have face-to-face and an online session, and you combine the results afterwards. So it's a significant handful of clubs, and it's maybe growing a little bit. The orange clubs are all offering both online and face-to-face sessions, but separately. The red area is the clubs that are offering only face-to-face. So it is a substantial proportion of the clubs that are actually open that I can see in my sample. And the green offering are clubs that are only online. The yellow ones are ones that are principally schools. The ones that are grey are dormant and have been dormant all the way through. And at the top are ones that have specifically declared that they're closing or have been or disappeared, basically. I think that's an undercount, and I think soon we're going to see the real rate of attrition, because clubs are coming up to whether or not they renew their websites and so on. And I suspect we'll see more there, which will be a great shame. So one thing I just wanted to point out is the steady growth in face-to-face. So I think face-to-face, like online, is here to stay. I think people want it. I reckon there must be at least 1,000 people who are making face-to-face happen. And the vast majority of them are unpaid volunteers who do it for the love of the game and the joy of providing something people enjoy or need. And I salute them. If you're one of them, well done. More and more, there are professionals out there like Oliver. So more and more you can contract out a lot of running a club and sessions. And I suspect soon we'll see traveling face-to-face directors as well, who will come in and direct for a fee. This dip here is Omicron. And the thing that I think was really interesting is if you look at it, it's pretty clear to me that a lot of hybrid clubs went online only when Omicron came along and have now tended to go back to being hybrid. So they've reopened. So one interesting thing about that is I think it gave clubs flexibility to respond. And I suspect we'll see that. I can't really see how members will force a club to go online. And I strongly suspect, talking to other people who've had legal challenges from members, that clubs so approached might well simply fold. So I hope it doesn't happen. New normal. Well, the thing I worry about is competition for the shrinking player pool. we've lost far more players than we're bringing in. And I think what would be most unfortunate would be for us to end up fighting over what's left. I think there's an effect where stronger players have not tended to return to their face-to-face clubs. They've tended to like the online game, the opportunity to get stronger competition in national competitions. And that's caused, I think, some difficulties with TDs and teachers in clubs. And it's a shame. And I think it contributes to a potential schism now of leisure bridge in face-to-face clubs and holidays and things like that, and online club where people are playing at a higher level online games. And again, I think that would be sad, but I think we were starting to see that before the pandemic, and I think it's carrying on. Venue costs, obviously, making fields not viable if you don't raise your table money, but bridge is unbelievably cheap as a way to get 3 hours fun. I mean, compare it with buying a drink in a pub and there you'll be back. And continuing health concerns. The pandemic has not gone away. Just to make that point, remember I was telling you how there were 5 or 6 cases in rugby, and then it went up to 100 cases and we had the lockdown over 2020 into 21. Well, now look what we've got in rugby, 7,500. It's affecting everyone. And of course, it means people who are nervous about coming back remain nervous. And I think still need the message that we're still managing transmission risk. So this is actually a reproduction of a slide I did for a previous CBU event about face-to-face bridge. And what I've done is simply put what we've changed from then. So we still issue a bowl of sanitizer for each player. We no longer use plastic screens because we've got too many tables and not enough screens. People take their bidding boxes and their sanitizer. We encourage them to wear face coverings when not at the table, and a few people do. Not huge numbers, but a few people do. We no longer deal a set of boards per table because even my husband won't do 11 sets. So there we are. We still try and keep touching the scoring tablet to north. We still use an extractor fan and we use fans to circulate air, but we've now got Hepa filters. And we still say to people every time they book to play that they must be fully jabbed and they must not come if they've been in contact with people or have been diagnosed themselves. And people have been really good about that. I mean, I've been surprised how good they've been. And I honestly think if you keep telling them it's good for them and it's good for the club, they will actually comply. And that's it, really. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and really appreciate you sharing that. And I know that Nikki's open for queries about, she's worked terrifically hard on investigating how best to mitigate infection risks at clubs. So if you have any questions about that, she's a great person to ask, as well as the way she's tracking what's happening in clubs and how they're getting on with their face-to-face returns. So thank you very much, Nikki. Now it's, I'm 3 minutes late. I don't think it's too bad, but we do want, I don't want anyone to leave with a question that they haven't been able to ask. So now is the time to questions for Nikki, questions for anyone else who's spoken, or for any EBU or board members or EBED. Over to you. You know, what would you like to know? And if there are things you'd like us to cover, maybe at another session or something, I mean, let us know about that so that we can work on that too.
I'd like to ask, I'd like to ask, is it legal to ask people to be fully jabbed? I don't think we have a right to ask people medical questions, which it is.
It's certainly legal to ask them not to come if they aren't fully jabbed. And I do know some bridge clubs are asking them to produce their NHS vaccine certificate. Nobody's tested yet whether that's legal or not, but every time I've heard it discussed, people have felt that health and safety would trump rights, any other rights on this, but nobody's tested it that I know of.
I would hate it to be introduced in our club. That's all I can say.
No, I understand. Yeah.
our approach has always been not to do anything more than your local pub does.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question to Nikki about HEPA filters, please? And the sort of cost.
Hi, I'm not the world's expert on this, but I do have some information. The ones we're using are ones that our Village Hall Trust has bought. They're floor-mounted ones, and I think they cost about 500 each. And they've bought 2 that we use in a big room and 1 we use in a smaller room. But there's a big variety. If you email me or something, I'll try and send you the model details of the one that they've got.
So what's the benefit in having that rather than just having an extractor fan pushing everything outside?
Well, allegedly the filters on the HEPA filter device will actually remove particulates and droplets from the air. So it's supposed to be slightly better, but to be honest, we're using both. We're using everything. We sometimes get complaints about people being cold, although that's getting better now. So we started doing hot drinks again. But I'm very unsympathetic to people who turn things off or shut windows or so on. And most people have got the message.
I've got a question for Tony here. Tony, some people have asked about electronic versions of the marketing material so they could maybe adapt them a bit. So any, what's the information on that?
Oh, well, I've got them electronically, yes, so they are available electronically. How would people access them? And have to let me know, I think.
I got some from Gail Webb. She sent them to me.
Yeah, so they are available. So let me think. Send a message to me, Tony Russ, all one word, @me.com. And I will arrange for you to get an electronic version of the resources. Tony Russ, that's all one word, .com, @me.com.
Okay, thank you very much. And also recommend that you keep an eye on the chat because there is a bit more information in there. One of the things Tony has said is that SmartBridge is in development. There's to be a second trial and hopefully a launch in the autumn. So it is work in progress, but there will be more information on that as it becomes available.
On that point, just remember that it's an eBed product, not an EBU product. So we're working together on that.
Yeah, thank you.
So Ian Carlton had his hand up for longer.
Oh, thank you very much. There are 2 main online bridge options, aren't there? BBO and Real Bridge. Will the EBU be preparing to endorse one in particular at some point if online bridge is here to stay?
I mean, I can speak to that. I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, as you know, we use both platforms for different things. So we run the 7 12-board games that the EBU runs every day are on BBO, and that makes sense because BBO's got there's more people on BBO, so that the games attract more people. For more tournament style events, we run them on RealBridge because RealBridge gives us much greater flexibility on movements, and lots of the tournaments we run just wouldn't be practical to run on BBO. So no, I think both platforms have advantages, and I imagine that we will continue to use both, and potentially other platforms that come along as well.
Thank you.
John, you had a question?
Yeah, John Oakland's also got his hand up.
Yes, we have 2 small clubs in the local area. One is offering online and the other is offering face-to-face, both struggling with numbers. Has the EBU any objection if playing the same boards on the same evening, the 2 sessions are merged to give one single overall ranking list?
No, not at all.
Sorry.
I mean, yes. So you would, yeah. I mean, there would be a few practical considerations with regards to how you then submitted the results and which club you submitted through. But no, absolutely.
Okay, and the other thing is, which we have found useful, if you've got small numbers and you've got a half table, you've got players sitting out, there is a method on BBO certainly where if you've got the right movement, you can set up a robot player for the sit out players to play against. This seems to be quite useful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. The players physically in the club can play on tablets for that round and play against robots. So that's something that some clubs were doing even before COVID. And yes, that certainly eliminates the sit out.
Okay.
We have a couple of bits of information on the website about it, I think. One of the Kent clubs was very early in doing it, and I think Gloucester have done as well. But I'm sure if you contact Jonathan, he'll be able to point you to the practical information about how to do it. On your earlier question about clubs merging for sessions, I think it's something that in principle we encourage greatly, is small clubs working together in order to avoid them finding that they're just too small. If they're close enough and cooperative enough that they can work with each other, we think that's a very good solution to the problem of declining numbers in small clubs.
Yes, and in terms of answering Jonathan's question of submitting results, if we do this, we intend to 1 week submit under one club and then
alternate. Yes, good idea.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, there's a link to information about using bots for half tables. That's from before COVID, but I mean the principle hasn't changed.
Could I just ask a question about going back to the cashless system? And how does that work if a lot of older people haven't got online banking?
I can comment a bit on that if you like. We've gone over to cashless and people are mostly playing by bank transfer. Well, we have one lady who I like, so we let her pay cash, but only the one. What we've found is, particularly if you use the Bridgeweb's accounting system, you generally find in a partnership, at least one of them can do bank transfers, and Bridgeweb's lets you set it up so that one pays for the other. So only one of them has to transfer. Where that hasn't worked, we find people's daughters are very useful, and often their daughters will transfer the money on their behalf. So we've pretty much eliminated cash, and it has made life a lot easier. And we did it initially for hygiene reasons, but we're not going to go back to accepting cash.
We use something called Zifit, which allows you to pay by card, like a scan in a shop, and that works very well.
What is the cost of that?
I don't know, but I know it wasn't very expensive. That's all I can say.
And bank transfer is free, and I was too mean to go in for any card system, but I'm beginning to think perhaps I could.
We've gone to cashless just like Nikki for hygiene reasons to start with, and most people pay online. If someone can't pay online, there's usually somebody else that will pay it for them and take the cash, or if someone gives you a check, we can send the check off. We've also used the attendance module on the website. We started using that so that people pay online, and that we download that from the bank and that gets updated, and that seems to be at the moment, fingers crossed, working quite well. So people can see, they can go into the website and see how much they owe, and once a month we send out an email to say, oh, your balance is going down. So that's worked out really quite well.
But not everyone's on email, are they?
No, not everybody is on email, but we know who's not on email, and you know, as Mark was saying earlier about being friendly, and we just try and look after the people that we know don't have email. We know who they are, the committee know who they are, and we just try and sort them out and And you know, we have one couple who are elderly couple, they don't do online, they don't do email, so we talk to them. We, you know, one of the committee members took their money, paid it in for them, we just tell them where they're at, and we just sort them out. The majority of people, surprisingly, are online these days, because don't forget, everybody who's on BBO has had to pay online, because how can they pay on BBO without doing online payments? So when we discussed it, we thought, well, people that are paying on BBO, and our BBO, going back to what Gordon said, I know I did have a lot of help from the EB, especially from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. He must have got sick of me. The local clubs, we just got together in lockdown and said, we've got to do this. We've got to find a director, and we found one brilliant director, trained up another one. We got our BBO sessions going, and as far as we're concerned, although we want to get back more to face-to-face, our face-to-face isn't as many as it was. We're going to keep the BBO going, because for some people that's a lifeline. People don't want to go out. People don't. We also lost our face-to-face session. We had to find a new one, and we couldn't get the same day, so that's also impeded our problems. But yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, it's all worked out quite well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. Jeff, you had a question.
Well, it's something I don't think we've quite discussed. At Cheddar, we have managed to run online, and we have restarted face-to-face. We are running both face-to-face and online sessions, and they seem to be running okay. We carried on teaching throughout the lockdown, and I was very lucky in that I could train up our existing teacher to start teaching online, and she's taken a group through for the last couple of years. But I think, like many people, our big problem is making the transition from the teaching environment into the club, actually getting people that we've taught playing in club sessions. And our problem is that we only have one or two people perhaps who are wanting to come forwards. So we can't run separate sessions for improvers, shall we say, or for mentoring, or for face-to-face, you know, actually sitting down and playing with them and chatting to them. And what I would like to see is that we could take someone who knows how to play bridge but needs the experience, put them in our normal session, but I want to be able to talk to them when they've made a mistake or something like that. They won't remember what has happened, and so that I can talk about it another day or something like that. I want to be able to deal with it essentially at the time. They also want to play much more slowly, I think, than our members. So perhaps they would only play two. If we played 3 board sessions, perhaps they would only have time to play 2 boards and so on. So would it be possible to take, say, someone who I was mentoring and play in a normal club session, but essentially the pair who we are playing against are effectively sitting out for that session, so that the score at that particular pair playing against us is just not recorded. Now, this needs changing in scoring, I guess, but do people think this would be a worthwhile way of trying to mentor people? It would let me, for instance, play with a beginner, and if necessary, they've made a mistake on the first hand or something's come up we need to talk about, I could perhaps deal with that and just not play the other 2 boards at that session, for instance, or let the other my partner play at a much slower rate so that we only get 2 or 3 boards.
We have tried that a long time ago when we were building up our club. We either had a half table or a pair that was accommodating, that were willing to help beginners, and we had a separate table that was not part of the movement as per se, but playing the same board. So you do need a duplicate set of boards.
Yeah.
But in that you can play at the teaching table, the beginner table, whatever you want to call it, at your own pace, but still play the same boards, and at the end be able to compare your results with everybody else.
Yes, but I'm saying when there's only one pair, if it's just me and one other, I don't, you know, it's not a whole table of beginners. There would be people in the main movement coming to play with us, but their score would just not have to count at that board.
Yeah, but if you've got a half table, that's it. Otherwise, say, we found in the beginning, if you talk to your players, there are some players that are altruistic and will give up their time. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think one answer to your question, Jeff, is that I mean, the question has multiple facets to it, if you like. There's a code for an EBU session called Code 11 where you can do what you like, but of course it won't then count for master points or NGS. So if that's a goal, then that's not suitable. I think it's somewhat problematic having a pair with who's. I mean, you can opt out a pair from NGS for a particular session, but that pair would still be playing against others and counting. In which case, if you're giving them assistance, it is somewhat problematic. I mean, Gordon is the expert on this.
Yeah. I would have thought the better solution would be just to set it up with a half table, and then you play the boards with your student, but don't score them, and then they won't they obviously won't count for the other pair because they haven't been entered, and then at the end the results can be just submitted as normal.
So that's okay if I have a half table.
Yeah.
I'm saying, what happens if I don't have a half table?
Well, yes, as you say, you would.
Sorry.
How were you thinking it would work? That you would create a half table so that you and your partner could join in?
Well, sometimes you might want two half tables if you've got two people doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, I'm saying, is there any, as far as I can say, I'm asking for this scoring software to be changed. The EBU score we use, you would be able to say, just drop these results from the event.
Okay. Well, let's take that offline, and we can.
Well,
we
can we find out whether people think this is a useful idea first, and if they think it is, then it would be.
What is wrong with having a relaxed bridge session, specifically at improvers, and any club members who are willing to help?
Well, this requires paying for the room for the room hire, and it requires having enough people to do it. We've only got perhaps one or two people coming through from the teaching. We teach groups of 10 or 12 people, but the number of those that are liable to actually come up into the club sessions are, you know, in ones and twos.
I think that's an absolute key issue, Jeff, and we've had a similar experience where we're getting classes of maybe 10 beginners. They go on the next year to be the improvers, and we get 3 or 4 who then graduate to duplicate. Now, whether we've made duplicate sound too difficult or too ferocious or whatever, but I think that's the issue. How do we get people to the table?
Nikki at Eden Bridge Club, and then Mike after that. You're muted, Nikki. There we are.
Yeah, that's fine. The best follow through we had was the year before COVID, when we said, okay, the courses finish, and for the next 4 weeks you come through into the big room free, and the teacher is there to help you. And we had, I don't know, probably about 60% of them became regular players.
Well, I've tried already taking the group into the actual venue where we're playing, and having them play the same boards as we play, but not in the movement. So they just play against themselves essentially, and it hasn't worked. I'm afraid we haven't got the people through. And And also that requires us to have at the venue a separate area if you're trying to deal with 3 or 4 people. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, was that on this topic or something new?
Well, it's sort of a follow-up to this, but it's also got another point. I think the point that Jeff raises is really important, because it's been a problem for us. We ran, oh, it must be 10 years ago, more, we started the teacher, when the EBU first said we can have free teacher courses. All you need to do is get a few people to join the EBU eventually. And we've had a very good teaching program, and they've graduated to be improvers. But as other people have said, we've only had 3 or 4 who've ever actively taken part in the club games. What does seem to work for us over lockdown is a sort of reverse engineering, where some of the club members who were getting desperate to play bridge anywhere, anytime, anyhow, said, could they come and play in our improvers group? So we ended up with we now run a gentle duplicate session, which was the old improvers who said they're just going to get beaten up if they came to club games. But now they've been joined by quite a few other players, and surprise, surprise, they find they're not getting beaten up. I mean, they hold their own quite often. So I think the next challenge is how we now get those, how we get some more of those to come to our better, for want of a better word, if that isn't a terrible pun, better club sessions. And that is a challenge. And I think I'm with Jeff on this one. I think that's the one of the big issues that we're facing in club bridge at the moment. I think the second one that Nikki alluded to in one of her statements was the sort of split where the better bridge players aren't coming back online. They aren't coming back face to face. They're choosing to play in more competitive events online. I don't think we're seeing it quite like that, but we are losing quite a lot of not quite county standard players, but players who are just below that level. So the better club players who just don't seem to be coming back. And I know the EBU has been putting in a lot of effort to, with this current marketing drive, to get new people into the game. But I'm more concerned about retaining the people we already had in the game at the sort of NGS 10 or Jack level, who we seem to be losing somewhere. I don't know where they're going. If anyone's got any ideas as how we get them back to the table, that'd be what I'd really like to know.
Can I give an answer to that one?
Yeah.
Because I've found this. I actually sort of tried for a little while to run games aimed at NGS 55 plus, and I put out a survey a few months ago to all the players on my database, and I got 40 or 50 responses back saying there was a certain session that would work. I put them on, and they don't turn up because they're actually, in most cases, happy having social matches between themselves. So if you go online, you'll find a lot of these players will have a regular session. There'll be, a regular 8, four pairs from the same area who will just be having a session between themselves while their club is playing an online game. And I think one of the reasons for that, we've all had it when we're playing the duplicate, and there is, you're playing the pair who finish in 6-no trump. Every other pair in the room opposite you is in 6-end going 1 off because both queens are offside, and you found the pair who thought 1 diamond plus 4 was the right place to play. And they just find they can have a chat about the hands, they can play the hands, and they don't want to be playing with other people. It is the experience that I've come across. That could be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected. But I know certainly when I've run these sessions, I've looked online and I've seen people playing, to people who've said they'd playing matches that I know were social because it's the same group they're always playing with. And I think that is one thing that we are up against.
I think the other thing, Oliver, whilst you're still talking here, is that back to these better players, if you like, they don't like the mixed ability club situation anymore because they know that they can have 4 of them play together or even do a team session. And that, I think that that's where the clubs are losing out, because the ability level is very mixed, and those higher level people don't want to play.
I just had a couple of thoughts on this. So there's a complicated technical question which Jeff has raised, which I think I'm going to defer to Jonathan and Gordon about that. We can get back on that. I think in general, and I take Leslie's point completely, and Mike's, but and Oliver's, but clubs that want to grow, really a mixed ability session has to be something the club accepts as a price of that, because there simply isn't an availability of excellent bridge players ready to stream into clubs. So mixed ability is something that one has to live with in a club, I believe. I think there's something in between what Jeff describes and what you might call full competition standard bridge. For example, I don't personally, and I'm in the presence of the chief TD here, but I don't personally have any problem with a novice consulting their notes during a club session. They're still probably not going to get a brilliant score at the end of it. So I think one has to be intelligent about that, but without going to the level of an expert, a mentor giving them advice, which is going to skew the results. So I think there is a sort of happy medium where one can overlook some lapses from competition bridge for the sake of a successful club session with a mixed ability group. And the other thing I'm very aware of is that people who learn together do want to play together.
Yes. Yes.
So how you actually preserve those groups of, we had people talking about, well, there were 10 pairs and then only 3 came. How you keep those 10 pairs playing together, or maybe even this is a case where one talks to other bridge clubs in the area and says, well, look, could our beginners group get together with your beginners group, and we could actually run a session just for them. They can play together with their friends and not feel the pressure. And I think somehow if we can just respect that social, that natural instinct of people, they've learned together, that they're enjoying each other's company, they want to play together, rather than saying, well, we're just going to extract a few of them and put them into a different session. I think there's a lot of mileage in that if one can make it work, but it is a complicated subject. Beryl.
Yes, hello, Southend and Lee Bridge Club here. I don't know, I missed the first 2 or 3 minutes because I had trouble getting online. Did you discuss real bridge at all? I mean, our club runs a session, it was every day, and it was something, we own our own building, we have an old church, and we've been very, very lucky to get through COVID and remain in the red, in the black, as it were. And we do have, we have a session, we have 2 sessions which are hosted, one on a Friday afternoon and one on a Wednesday afternoon. Numbers are trickling back. I take the point about some people who learn together do want to play together, and that has happened, and they haven't joined in the rest of the sessions. Have you discussed real bridge today? Because that is an area where when people do play together, they are able, of course, to discuss the hands and the wheres and the why for afterwards. Is that?
I think what you're maybe asking, if I'm understanding you right, a sort of gentle duplicate sessions on real bridge where people break the rules, as it were, by talking about what they're doing.
Yes.
I think you can certainly run that as a gentle duplicate session. What you can't do, of course, is make it a session that is submitted for master points and things, because that would be completely inappropriate. But there's no problem in running that kind of session, and I think it can be very, very useful. In fact, at our own club, and Bob is also here from Winchester, we've had some very successful, sort of teaching sessions where we have a supervisor at every table, and people can ask whatever they like. And it's a very good way of improving bridge, and people do seem to enjoy it. So absolutely you can do that, but it's not a club session. It's not something that would be submitted for master points, because
oh no, I realise that. Yes.
Yeah, but it definitely has a part to play,
Can I just make clear what our problem is? We have no problem in teaching people bridge and getting them to enjoy it. In fact, we have 8 people in our latest group that play together 4 times a week, but they play together 4 times a week. Our problem is transferring people into the club session, and I want to run a mentoring system. I don't want to tell them what to do. They are playing on their own, but with me, and then have time to deal with any issue that comes up as it happens. That is what I'm asking for, to be able to play in a club session, but for my results and my partner results not to affect what other people in the session do. We're not playing for NGS, but the rest of the session is, and
we will get back to you on what is possible in terms
yeah, I
of
want to have a variable number of those. Perhaps we might have 3 people, 2 people, in a variable number of pairs that do not, their results that that they play do not count. And we don't have that. I think it would be a useful idea for us.
Yeah, no, I do get that. So we will get back to you on what can be done on that respect. Anybody else? So we've got to 11:35. I'm all in favour of keeping things, you know, to the not to the point where everyone is tired. I know some people have had to leave, which is fine, but I don't want to miss anybody out. So any other pressing concerns that you'd like to raise? And I think we will make this recording available later that you can share with your committee or others as you want to. So bear that in mind.
A quick question. You're saying you're making the recording available later. The slides that were shown, will they be available on the EBU website so that we can print them off, or
we can try and gather those from the speakers. I mean, otherwise they would be in the recorded session. You could watch that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm saying thank you. I'm leaving. Bye.
Okay. Thanks. Anything else?
Can I come in?
Yeah.
Can I just Blueberry Bridge Club, smaller club? Can I reinforce what one or two I found very interesting? One or two people said about losing the medium strength sort of players. It is very, very critical for a club of my size. I am running really short of people to do things like teaching, like directing. 7 directors 3 years ago. I'm down to about 2 now, actually active, although there are 1 or 2 more that might come back in if COVID drops down. I don't feel, I mean, the vast majority of our membership is a social membership. A lot of them don't probably ever look at the EBU website. They're not interested in their NGS levels. And those sort of people are not appropriate to do these sorts of tasks. It's a real problem for a smaller club. We have lost that medium strength player, and I'm getting past the stage where I do everything myself, to be honest. So, and I'm not sure anybody can give me an answer to this, but I think it's something perhaps everyone should be aware of. And I was glad that 1 or 2 other people have raised this issue. For a bigger club, it probably isn't quite as critical, although they feel that loss of those sorts of people, but it's probably not quite as critical as it is for a smaller club like mine. It really is a big, big problem, getting people who have a reasonably good knowledge of bridge. Those are the sorts of people you need to get to do bridge-related activities and help. And we're really, really short of those people. I've lost people. Members.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we have heard that, and we're something to reflect on for sure. Bob.
Yes, just following on from what Jeff was saying. I remember sort of years ago, many of us had to learn by going into the deep end and playing club sessions, and sometimes making a few mistakes was a good way to learn, provided you knew you were making a mistake. And as Jeff says, you have to go through the hands with the player and tell them where they went wrong, or perhaps ask them a few questions as to how they could have done better. And I think nowadays, when most clubs have got websites with all the hands there, you can go through the hands afterwards without slowing down the session, and get a lot done that way to improve the player. And I think when they come back the next time, even if they only got 35% the first time, they'll probably go up a bit the next time and gradually improve. And I just wondered whether that might be an alternative way of progressing things.
Yeah,
Don't,
thanks.
Don't know whether anybody
very
else
much.
has opinions on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's good insight. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to, or shall we wrap up? It's 20 to 12 now. Well, that sounds like a good moment then to wrap up. And I just want to again thank you so much for coming today. We're very grateful to you for giving out your time. And we do want to do more of these sorts of sessions where they're helpful. So things that you want to cover, just drop me a line, tim@ebu.co.uk, or one of my colleagues, and we'll be sure to lay something on for you. So thanks again for coming. And thanks also to all our speakers. It's been really interesting.
Thank you all.
Thank you.